Hey, it's Debbie, and I went down a really long rabbit hole yesterday and wanted to share some slides I added. I'm doing a presentation, actually two presentations, one in person and one online for metabolism testing. And I own PNOE Metabolic Testing Kit and started testing people 2 years ago in North San Diego, Solana Beach, and recently had one of my friends do 4 different tests using a supplement, some nutrients I've talked about, trim from the company's called Avere, and it's to stimulate AMPK pathway. And then we did the test on the treadmill, a walking protocol because he doesn't run. So we went up incline every 3 minutes to figure out his fat metabolism, peak fat max. So we went a little different than a VO2 max protocol. We used blood flow restrictive bands. Super fascinating to see what happens with and without AMPK stimulant, supplement, nutritional therapy, and then with and without the blood flow restrictive bands. And so what we're really looking at is AMPK versus mTOR. I used to hear all about fasting. And I don't know, 10 years ago, we got into fasting. Intermittent fasting was all the new research and the rage. Do 2 day, 3 day fast, a 24-hour fast every week is to lower mTOR and to increase AMPK. But similar to being carnivore or not carnivore, keto, that we were working on eating high fat, really low carb, we kind of forgot about protein, opposite of carnivore, and really focusing on not stimulating mTOR. But what happens when we do anything too much? It's causing some imbalances somewhere else. I call this the Goldilocks effect, and it's pretty much for everything. The body is amazing. And when we look at something as specific today, AMPK versus mTOR, it's that teeter-totter. How much do we need to stimulate of one pathway to not do too much to the other? Even say the microbiome. If we have too much of one good bacteria, it can outnumber and decrease other bacteria. And I always think of that in my analogy is the garden when our garden was overgrown and all these other plants I never knew about were underneath these giant overgrown rubber tree plants and succulents. And so we didn't know all these little plants and flowers are underneath hiding because the one was dominating the other. So I digress as usual, but AMPK versus mTOR, we don't want to always be in a breakdown state. We need to be in a building state. So anabolic versus catabolic. Catabolics break down. It's what I started to say, and I get on tangents, but the benefit we were doing keto, and people still do for nutritional therapy for people that have metabolic dysfunction, is helpful, but we have to remember protein because we were starting to see a pattern of people not hitting enough essential amino acids. We were focused on the fats. We were getting essential fatty acids ideally, but the amino acids from protein with proper digestion into protein breaks down to amino acids that we were hitting those protein goals. And when we're focusing on just fat, we forgot about protein. Now, if we're focusing on just the AMPK and how we'll do that, we'll explain next. But we forget about mTOR. So it's not one or the other. Everything is the right balance, the Goldilocks effect. We need to build muscle, especially as we age. We want to focus on avoiding sarcopenia, loss of muscle. So I've shifted my focus, my fueling and training to prioritize my protein intake every meal, hit my protein goals. And if I don't, I have the need to supplement pretty much every day with essential amino acids in the morning and at night. I also need to focus on doing less cardio and doing more strength training. And then, especially as I've identified my own metabolism is slow based on my PNOE test and my struggle to lose weight, correlates with my genetic profile and also with my blood chemistry panel as really low thyroid, which we want to look at the full free T3, not just TSH, but I'm looking at the free T4 and free T3, and free T3 is the active form. T4 needs to convert to T3. This is why I look at the whole picture when working with people. So let's move on. I'll stop talking from this. Now, what even is AMPK pathway? So I put these all into slides. So this seminar will be on what is AMPK, what is mTOR, how can we test this, and how do we know we need one or the other, or how to keep it in balance, and what are some workouts to stimulate, and what are some nutritional therapy options for stimulating these pathways. If you're looking at body composition improvements, if you are looking at performance, if you're looking at all these different areas of longevity markers, we want to look at the whole picture. All right, so AMPK and mTOR, they are two different pathways that are critical in signaling our cell functions. So cellular signaling mechanisms, and they're involved in energy regulation, metabolism, cellular growth. And they're especially important part of our health, aging, and performance. Is why I am diving deep into this topic. And I think you probably might be curious as well. If you listen to any of my videos on this channel, this might be interest to you. Now, AMPK specifically, we'll start there, is often referred to the body's energy sensor. The AMPK pathway is activated in response to when we have low energy states. So this makes sense that we stimulate AMPK pathway when we are doing exercise as zone 2, or when we're doing high intensity interval training as zone 5 to zone 1, we are in a low energy state. As well as if we are fasting, that's obviously a low energy state, or just restricting calories. AMPK pathway is activated. When the energy levels drop, so we have lower energy production, low ATP levels, AMPK pathway is activated to help restore the energy balance by stimulating processes that generate energy. So fat burning, hello, we want that, right? Lipolysis and uptake of our glucose. It can also inhibit processes that consume energy, like protein synthesis, which we kind of want, right? And cell growth, which we want but don't want if it's cancer cells, disease cells. So again, think of this when I'm going through these definitions from AI, it's all right, but that's not bad, but it's the Goldilocks effect for everything. So we are enhancing mitochondrial biogenesis. We'll talk about that in more depth as I've done in other videos, but this is important for endurance athletes as myself, and cellular function for improving the aging process. So athlete or not, you should have healthy mitochondria. And as we age, we want to create new and healthy, vibrant mitochondria. So I found some good images. I'll put on this. I put on the different slides that I don't really exactly know all this world. I'm just trying to learn and share with you. But there's a lot of words in that picture. I know amino acids and mTOR, Raptor, mTOR, Richter, and how all those different words. I know PGC1 alpha, we talk about that's needed to stimulate mitochondria biogenesis. And we've talked about PPAR, that's needs to be activated lipid metabolism. So as we can see, I like the pictures because we can see visually how important both pathways are. So let's go into mTOR. mTOR is a central regulator of cell growth, cell proliferation, and protein synthesis. mTOR is activated by sufficient nutrients, as we talk about amino acids and getting that leucine. Remember the leucine threshold. We have to stimulate muscle protein synthesis with the right amino acid profile that includes that leucine threshold that we've heard about from Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and Donald Lehman's leucine threshold theory. Insulin. So insulin isn't good or bad, same with cortisol. We need it, but just the right amount. And insulin is helpful there. And growth factors and mTOR promotes synthesis and muscle growth, which I want, cell division and repair, a good thing, storage of fat and glycogen, maybe if you need it for fuel, inhibiting autophagy. So this is the bad part, but remember, we need off and on of everything. This process of cleaning up damaged cells and proteins is inhibited. So remember, autophagy is dead cells, so inhibits autophagy. So mTOR turns it off, AMPK turns it on. mTOR is crucial for muscle growth and repair, making it important for recovery and strength training. Really important, right? So as we're aging, we need both. There's benefits from both being AMPK and mTOR. So again, it's a balance of them. So we have the Krebs cycle here, this mitochondria where we create ATP, burning fat or glycogen in the mitochondria through the Krebs cycle to create ATP energy. And so we want to look at all the roles that AMPK versus mTOR. So let's go into it a little deeper. So we continue. AMPK is activated under stress. So we learned that fasting, exercise, calorie restriction, and it promotes catabolic. Remember, catabolic is breaking down, anabolic is building up. So we have the opposite. Breakdown versus mTOR, you see, is activated when we have lots of nutrition. So if we eat all the time, we're always in mTOR. I think that's why fasting got to be popular. People that overeat and they are never short of calories, they're always in mTOR. So again, not too much, not too little, the right amount, the Goldilocks effect. mTOR promotes anabolic processes, growth, repair, and muscle building. So we don't want to be stuck in either. Similar to the nervous system, sympathetic nervous system to parasympathetic nervous system. We don't want to be stuck in parasympathetic because we'd be lazy and tired all the time. And we don't want to be in sympathetic all the time because it'd be wired and crazy and like too overactive all the time. So AMPK and mTOR are often seen as opposing forces. When AMPK is activated, as when we're not eating, fasting, exercise, this turns off or inhibits mTOR to prevent energy-consuming processes of cell growth. So it depends on the person, what your areas of opportunity, what are you struggling with, what are you needing help and guidance with, and we can figure out more of a plan. We'll talk about the end. When mTOR is activated during feeding and after strength training, it inhibits AMPK for allow cell growth and protein synthesis. So it's super fascinating mechanism of the body, how it works. So why does this matter to you? Why do you care? Why should you care? Maybe you don't care, but maybe you will after this. When AMPK is activated, it helps your body switch to fat burning and energy production during periods of stress or low energy. It supports the efficient fat metabolism, endurance, and mitochondrial health, which are all important for people as myself that are endurance athletes, or if you're just looking to maintain your body composition while aging. Now, on the flip side, mTOR is critical for anabolic. Remember, anabolic building, muscle repair, growth, and protein synthesis. It plays a vital role in muscle hypertrophy, getting not necessarily bigger, but stronger from strength training, supports cellular repair, important for recovery, maintaining muscle mass, especially as we're aging. And this is what I'm trying to shift the focus on this channel for, to be fit and healthy from the inside out as we age. As we're in midlife, we're starting to see, hey, the second half of my life, how am I going to be showing up to life each day? How am I going to feel? How am I going to move? How am I going to look? I don't want to be all wrinkles. I don't want to be struggling to get up out of a chair or off the floor, right? So we need to focus on this now. Don't wait until you are broken. So an imbalance between these two pathways where one is overly active while the other is underactive can result in these problems. As you probably already figured out, too much AMPK, too much fasting, too much endurance exercise without adequate mTOR activation can lead to muscle breakdown, poor recovery, or lack of muscle growth. Excessive mTOR activation without AMPK activation can possibly lead to excessive fat storage or stop your body's ability to burn fat effectively, possibly leading to metabolic issues. So think of the people that are eating all day long. They have 6 meals a day. They're just always doing those small little meals. Their body's always consuming and digesting. There's no digest rest. So they could be turning off AMPK, being stuck in mTOR. So what do we need to do to establish balance? We'll talk about that, but we can control this and optimize how our body uses energy, how we build muscle, how do we burn fat and recover from training? Because I want it all, don't you? So I call again the Goldilocks effect. Figuring out how to get my body to burn fat, how to get stronger, how to get more powerful, and how to improve my lifespan. So it's a quality life span, not live and be struggling when I'm older. I want to be thriving and really doing what I can do now. So dietary restriction, a low energy state, AMPK versus a high nutrient state, mTOR. High nutrient state lowers or activates mTOR, right? Anabolic metabolism lifespan, low energy state. So you can see this teeter-totter effect. So let's go into this. How do we assess? So combination lab testing, your lifestyle, your fueling training, sleep, stress, all that holistic math that I talk about. Performance indicators. I like to have baseline data. So we'll talk about how PNOE metabolism testing plays a role here, as well as what labs we can do. To stimulate or support AMPK, exercise, but what type of exercise and what intensity? So it's always said high intensity interval training and endurance exercise activate AMPK. This is hugely one size fits all saying. I want you to understand you don't know what HIIT is, and you don't know what is your true zone 2 unless we do metabolism testing, the exercise active metabolism testing. So take note, what is HIIT training? Most people do it wrong. Most people don't go hard enough and they don't recover long enough to go hard enough again. So we're really not activating zone 5 where we want to get the benefits from for AMPK. Now, zone 2, most people are in zone 3. So you're really not stimulating AMPK because you're not working at your peak fat max. So I think a lot of people are missing this personalization of stimulating AMPK and fat metabolism because they're not there. As Stacy Sim says, it's too easy. Their exercise sessions are too easy to be hard and they're too hard to be easy. So you're really just doing zone 3, zone 4, which isn't helping us here. All right, number 2, fasting and calorie restriction. Now, if you're fit and active as myself, you might have experienced you did it too much as myself. And really, I don't know if my low thyroid has to do with that, but I was not eating enough calories. I was doing excessive fasting and doing that when I'm doing a lot of exercise. So when we hear about fasting or calorie restriction, that is for more of the sedentary, metabolically unhealthy population. So you have to apply it differently depending on your current activity level. Now, testing, we can do your metabolic markers as in blood chemistry is insulin, glucose, ketone levels. We can do the Keto Mojo, or I used another company that I'm doing insulin, glucose, ketones, and lactate with them. So look at my video on that device. You can indicate how well your body's adapting to periods of low energy. Also, you can use a lumen. That would be a great investment. You can save $100 with my code, so it's very affordable. Now, your nutrition, low-carb or ketogenic diet might support AMPK activation, promoting fat oxidation and metabolic flexibility. So training your body to use fat metabolism, oxidized fat, will help support AMPK pathway. But this is where we need to strategically place your nature's carbohydrates in and around your intense workout. So when we say, that's why I switched the podcast from being low carb athlete, because I didn't want to just talk just athletes and I didn't want to just be low carb. It's more about eating real food, adjusting your macronutrients based on your activity and intensity level. So if you're doing a sprint interval training where your fuel source, if you watch the other videos, what's fuel source you're burning at those higher intensities is not fat. It is more stored glycogen and even creatine phosphagen. So you need to look at placing those carbs in around so you can go hard enough. mTOR, by the way, at the bottom here, consuming protein, getting the leucine threshold to activate mTOR. Strength training is where we want to activate mTOR as well. And this is where you hear about, okay, what do we need to avoid sarcopenia? Is combining protein-focused meals, protein-forward meals, and your strength training going heavy enough to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. That is correlated with activating mTOR. So we can look at what testing to do, checking protein intake, your macros, your amino acid profiles, IGF-1, growth hormones, and see if your mTOR is being supported enough and not too much. And then, of course, sleep, nutrition, overall recovery promotes mTOR activation. So does this kind of make sense? It correlates with everything we've been talking about. Now, when I do PNOE Metabolism Testing, how can we determine if you are needing more support mTOR or do you need more support AMPK? If your metabolism test results with me show poor fat oxidation, which means you have a high RER at a low intensity, that would give me clues when I'm writing your personalized program suggestions that you probably benefit from more zone 5 true sprint interval trainings with zone 1 recovery. So twice as long in your zone 1, then go to zone 5 again. And maybe if you're a male, fasted zone 2 sessions. Women, we might do better having little calories on board beforehand, based on what Stacy Sims has said. Now, zone 2 is your peak fat max. If you have not tested that, I guarantee you, your poor fat oxidation is probably because you're not even training in your zone 2. You're training zone 3. Number 2, if your metabolic flexibility is good, that means we can add in some zone 4 HIIT, which is the 1 to 4 minute duration and 1-to-1 ratio, I would say. So then your 1 to 4 minute recovery in zone 1. Remember, recovery starts once you hit zone 1, not your way down there. And that will help with the lactate metabolism and performance. Now, if your goal is longevity and just I want to improve my markers for aging, we want to prioritize AMPK, heavy training, HIIT, and endurance. So we want to focus on the intervals, maybe twice a week, depends on the person, and endurance. If your strength and muscle growth is a goal, then we want to make sure we're hitting more mTOR activation, maybe twice a week with more strength training. So see how we need to personalize it. And the answer is it depends on where you are now on your fitness and nutrition lifestyle journey. And what do we need to tweak and adjust based on your data when we test, okay? So come to Solana Beach and we'll do testing. So what do you do testing-wise? Blood test to look at energy metabolism, muscle growth, and that will help give us clues about your pathways that might need more attention. Genetic variants to correlate with your metabolic pathways. There's different genetic SNPs we can look at regarding AMPK and mTOR signaling. So I like the DNA company for that and putting that together. The blood test, I'm sending clients and I'm trying to get a discount code for Function Health. It's Dr. Mark Harmon's companies he invested in, and it's really affordable. You get 100 lab markers, blood chemistry, and they come to your house and you have to do like 20 vials of blood. So ask me for a code so I can get more people over there and get those labs done properly. Now, metabolic testing, as I'm talking about PNOE, peak VO2, not necessarily your max, metabolic efficiency, lactate threshold kind of is more your peak fat max to metabolic crossover point is more what I'm talking about. So you don't need to be an athlete. I hope you are just being a health optimizer and motivated to be your best self in the future and improve how you age. So tracking your strength improvements. Your muscle mass, getting your body fat, your lean body mass is what you want to look at, increasing and lowering your fat mass, but focus on muscle. Listen to Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. We don't have a lack of, it's not a fat problem, it's a lack of muscle problem. And I really believe in that for sure. Makes sense. Now, if you're not recovering from your workouts, or you're just feeling tired, we want to look at more than just performance, but maybe look at your thyroid and your cortisol. I would do a Dutch test to look at your hormone panel. So we want to activate both pathways, but if your goal is fat loss or muscle gain, should be the same. Performance, longevity, you want to test and not guess. Okay, so when we're doing the PNOE test, the AMR is an active metabolism test. How do we know if you're using fat enough? So the respiratory exchange ratio to review is called RER. We're measuring with the face mask on and analyzing the air. The gas you're breathing is O2 in and carbon dioxide out. That tells us the ratio is a carb to fat oxidation. When we're doing your treadmill test or whatever cardio machine, fat max zone is the bottom of zone 2, and the top of zone 2 is your crossover point where carbs increase, and that's also called LT1. Now, this can help us figure out your max fat oxidation. If it happens really early on, we know we have some mitochondrial dysfunction, metabolic health, and AMPK needs to be improved. We can tell your intensity, which glycolysis dominates, linking mTOR activation for performance and adaptation. So we can see these different changes when we do the testing. We also can tell if you're high carb oxidation and a poor fat burning, that's going to give us clues of metabolic inflexibility. So that would tell me, hey, let's focus on AMPK and stimulate HIIT, which remember, we need to look at what HIIT is for you because people are not doing it correctly. And fasting, if that's appropriate for you. Now, if your RER is high at low intensity, then I don't really see your fat max. I've seen this a lot. People's peak fat max is down under 100 heart rate. And I'm supposed to start the test when they're around 100, 110. Well, I don't because I start where people are just walking and I see this carb dependency early on. So that means early glycolysis reliance, or shifting to more endurance-based training before we start doing HIIT. So we need to customize. Not everyone should just do HIIT or sprint interval training sit. If your VO2 max or peak VO2, I rather say, is low, and your recovery that we do post peak, we could do a 2.5. I've been doing 5-minute recovery test, just bringing back to walking. If this doesn't show you're burning fat, we need to support your mitochondria, AMPK improvements. All right, so what are some protocols? Again, what does HIIT mean? Because I keep saying this, it's confusing HIIT training because of Orange Theory and F45. I really believe people are doing this incorrectly. So short bursts of max intensity, 20 to 40 seconds is zone 5. Key part here is rest is 1 to 2 minutes or longer. If you take a long time to bring your heart rate back into zone 1, you're in zone 1 minute or more. Okay. So if you're not doing interval correctly, at first, it might take minutes to get your heart rate back down. That's okay. That's where you are. It's only going to get better. High intensity interval training, sprint training is what we're talking about more specifically, stimulates AMPK by inducing energy stress. So acute stress is short bursts, is 10, 20, 30 seconds. It's not the 4-minute pieces. That's not AMPK. So we're looking at sprint interval training more than HIIT. So zone 5 to zone 1. This enhances fat oxidation post-exercise, improving mitochondria function. Now, endurance training is going to be that zone 2, training around your peak fat max. I would delete the 60 to 70% of your VO2 max because that is math and not testing what you actually are based on fuel source. So science versus math, do not use percentage of VO2 max. If you know your VO2 max for sure, in a test, you know for sure where your fat max is if you had a proper test. So endurance exercise or zone 2 peak fat max testing training activates AMPK, teaches your body to mobilize fat for fuel, and also the mitochondria that are creating that ATP is creating new mitochondria are super essential part of the aging process. So we get new ones and get rid of the old ones. Now, fasted exercise is confusing. Men versus women, there's different protocols. So performing exercise on an empty stomach, if you wake up and go work out, which like I did this morning, it's okay to not eat for 12 hours. It should be normal. Stacy Sims says that. But if you're going to do above your peak fat max workout, do not do it fasted. That can be stressful in your body, especially for us females in midlife. So fueling maybe some calories in your coffee is a great stacking your coffee is helpful. If you are doing a zone 1 to bottom of zone 2, so your peak fat max, or use Maffetone's max aerobic function 180 minus your age plus or minus 5 beats. That's your highest heart rate you go. Maybe you're okay doing a 45-minute max exercise session without having calories. You're teaching your body. If you're really truly being at your fat max, you're burning, enhancing fat oxidation, improving metabolic flexibility. So morning walk, jog, cycling after 12-hour fast should be okay, but you have to keep your heart rate down low. Should be easy. Now, Stacy Sims might say differently if you're, going, well, I do think she does say zone 1 is okay not to eat. She's more talking about that we need to fuel properly for the workout at hand for females. All right, AMPK stimulated protocols based on what we collect. Again, we're not using the percentages. If you really know your true fat max, it's science, fat. We can identify it on the test. We're not using mathematical equations. So high intensity interval, again, is more zone 5, 30 seconds, 90 seconds or longer rest for stress stimulating AMPK. We've got zone-based training. So just summarizing what I just said, but training at or above fat max and VO2 max workouts, prolonged high intensity, blah, blah, blah. So we went over that, but just to summarize. If you're having glucose pre-training, it can favor mTOR and glycolic metabolism. That's what I used to always went by. I don't know if that's different. I just go by how you feel, because don't have any carbs for so long before workout because it will shift me to be burning glucose. But as I learn, females, we're already good at using fat, and so maybe we just need a little carbs on board to get our blood glucose levels up. And it takes a few minutes, you kind of feel it when you go for a workout that you're 10 minutes in, then you feel better. And I feel like that's because we're just taking that much time to get the fat metabolism going. Glucose on board first is quick, instant energy, right? So you can have instant fuel. So again, specific workouts, I just wanted to dive in deeper. Short, all-out burst, or you're doing zone 4 it's less effective for AMPK, but zone 5 is really what the breakdown is, best zone for activation of AMPK. Zone 4 induces metabolic stress, but is relying more on glycolysis, and that's more mTOR driven adaptation. So interesting, when I dive into this, it helps for lactate clearance, metabolic flexibility. Optimal pure AMPK activation would be zone 5 or zone 2. All right, so how do we know? Again, if your RER is 0.85, that's 50-50 fat to carbs. So if you're working out, we're warming up on the test and you're already at 0.85 or higher, you're poor fat oxidation. We need more zone 5 to zone 1 and zone 2. If your fat max occurs at a higher VO2 max, you're efficient fat burning, you can use zone 4, zone 1, as well as the sprint interval training. If your lactate production is higher than it should be, or your carbohydrate, you're relying more on glycolysis. Since we're actually testing your carbohydrate metabolism, we can tell not by lactate, but glycolysis levels are high. We want to reset your metabolic pathways. And we'll go into what that means. AMPK stimulated HIIT protocol is zone 5 to zone 1 focus. And it's the fastest way to deplete ATP. So that's why zone 5 is important, or a fasted zone 1, 2, because your low energy state remembers AMPK. This enhances fat ox and mitochondrial function. Minimal mTOR activation due to lower volume and less reliance on carbs. All right, so more protocols nutritionally, some suggestions on non-workout days, calorie restriction, 12-hour fast, low carb, strategic carb timing, promotes AMPK pathway, increasing fat oxidation, healthy fats, moderate protein, minimal carbs, under 50 grams a day if you're not exercising, polyphenols, antioxidants, green tea, really helpful here, activates AMPK. Berberine is also shown to activate AMPK, and you can get those on my full script. If you ask me, my favorite berberine is what Sean Wells suggested to me with the glycovantage type of berberine. I forget the name. That helps improve glucose metabolism as well. So 500 milligrams 2 to 3 times a day. Or if you look at what we're talking about, the Avere Trim, ask me for the link, and you can just put this packet, liposomal, and it has all this in there, and you can just drink it pre-workout. So sleep, stress reduction is essential to all of this. You can't out-supplement poor lifestyle habits, and you can't out-exercise poor nutrition habits, and it's a holistic approach. So a lot of times I'm finding sleep and stress reduction need to happen before all this other stuff. All right, some other workout ideas, resistance training to improve mTOR. So now we're talking about protocols to improve mTOR, muscle growth, recovery. All right, so strength training, 6 to 12 reps, I wouldn't say. After a while, that might be good in the beginning. Then we need to go heavier, stimulating the protein. I like to go with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and Donald Layman. They're 1 gram to, well, it's more, her ratio is simple math. It's 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. And then timing your carbs. Leucine threshold we need to hit to activate mTOR. So supplementing with leucine needs to be part of the essential amino acids. So make sure you don't take leucine by itself. It has to be with all the essential amino acids. Nutrient timing is key, having the protein post-workout to help maximize muscle growth and repair. And thanks to my friend GPT, gave me this nice little chart. Here's that sample workout plan. What are the benefits, AMPK versus mTOR? So here's a good way to kind of have a mixture. And do you not love ChatGPT? I know there's other ones, but it just knows me. It's freaking me out and does this amazing work for me. It makes all this so much easier to do. So this is a great example. If you want more personalized program, this is just an average, but you know, there's no exact copy. You shouldn't do this without talking to me or find a practitioner to help you. But all right, so sleep, active recovery, hydration, and then creatine. I use Keon creatine. Make sure it's a pure, good source of creatine. 5 grams, 3 to 5 grams is suggested. I've been doing 5 grams, just put in my water. Another thing to look at, beta alanines, a lot of pre-workouts to help buffer acid buildup in muscles, improving high intensity workouts. So if you're doing your sprint interval training, lifting heavy weights, having a pre-workout, some with beta alanine, and creatine can be beneficial. Test and not guess so. So balancing the two. So during fat loss and endurance phases, focus on AMPK, fasting HIIT, and or endurance training. Need a little bit of both. During muscle gain recovery phases, focus on mTOR with resistance training, high protein, forward thinking meals, and recovery protocols. If you're looking to maintain both fat loss and muscle gain, so body recomp, balance that AMPK activation through a moderate HIIT in endurance with mTOR activation via strength training, recovery, nutrients. So again, it's that balance of all these things. It's just not only doing zone 2, not just doing HIIT training, not just doing strength training. Plus we need yoga, mobility work, and all that. So just come back, how do we test this with PNOE? We're measuring your resting metabolic rate, your VO2 peak, your metabolic crossover point. I would switch that word out, lactate threshold, and your RER. If you're burning more fat at low intensities of exercise or during rest, that means healthy activation of AMPK and fat metabolism. Testing helps pinpoint us if you are metabolically flexible, meaning your body can efficiently switch between burning fat and carbohydrates depending on activity level and available energy. So this is how we can create a personalized nutrition, exercise, lifestyle program and supplement where needed to help reach your goals. So we're minimizing excessive fat or muscle loss, right? So it's all important. Less fat, more muscle. So looking at comprehensive metabolic analysis, optimizing metabolic flexibility, get a personalized program for AMPK fat burning and muscle growth recovery, mTOR. Balance the two pathways to ensure energy efficiency, muscle preservation. Tailor your exercise nutrition recommendations to enhance endurance, fat loss, muscle building, improving performance, providing data on VO2 max, lactate, or rather, let's again, metabolic efficiency crossover point, MEP, and recovery. Support post-workout recovery to optimize fueling strategies for muscle repair and glycogen replenishment. So make sure you work on your nutrition. Again, mTOR balance, we're trying to get both, and personalized programming. So let you look at that. Whoops. So recovery insights, personalized programming. It's all kind of the same. More duplicate. So what do you do? Zone 1 or zone 2, fat oxidation reset. Zone 5, cellular energy reset. 20, 40 seconds, 90-second or longer recovery. Increases AMPK, biogenesis, metabolic flexibility. Improves ability to switch between fat and carbs. Fasted or minimal carbs to promote AMPK when you're doing zone 1, 2. Strength training, mTOR for muscle metabolism, lifting heavy, 5 reps, 3 to 5 reps, high intensity, supports muscle insulin sensitivity. And I must say, when we say strength training, heavy lifting, I see people do the lamest workouts in the gym. They're sitting, scrolling on their social media on their phone. That is not an intense workout, is not mentally focused and engaging the muscles with the mind-body connection. So if you're scrolling on your phone, listen to music is one thing. But if you're sitting there while you're trying to lift weights on a machine on your phone, as I see people doing a leg press or leg extension, why don't you get up, do some squats and kettlebells and step ups and lunges and more functional strength. They're great to do machines, but focus on, I have to concentrate on activating the right muscles and pressing into my feet and activating my glutes. And there's a lot to think about when you're lifting. So even if you're on a machine, be present, be active, and focus on what you're doing at the time, please. All right, so there's information we went over, so you can look at that and press pause if you need to. Now, nutritional strategies to summarize. I really love this. Protein, 46 grams. Now, I'm recording this while I'm at Natural Product Show Expo West, and I'll be going this afternoon. My focus is finding protein, animal-based protein, drinks, bars, jerky, whatever we can to get more protein in it, and it's hard. So have real food, have some meat. Low carb days, high carb days, when you're doing the strength, avoid low carb, chronic adaptation to blunt thyroid metabolic function, and mitochondria boosting nutrients, berberine, PQQ, CoQ10, creatine, electrolytes. Lifestyle habits, cold exposure, cold plunges or showers, helps with fat oxidation with the brown fat, and mitochondria efficiency, so it's activating AMPK. Sauna, I use my Sunlight sauna. If you want one, you can get a $500 off with my coupon, so I always ask first before you buy something. Boost heat shock proteins to protect your mitochondria, and also brain health, brain drive neurofactor, BDNF. Prioritize sleep. Sleep is key, and stress. So let's go over this real quick. Just read what it says. Poor sleep blunts AMPK activation. That means core fat metabolism, increase in insulin resistance. This is why often working with clients, first order of operations, do we need to start focusing on our sleep or stress? Chronic cortisol impairs fat oxidation because chronic cortisol elevation increases what? Glucose. What if we're always elevating glucose from stress, from cortisol? We're also increasing insulin, and so insulin resistance, and insulin's up, fat oxidation's down. Metabolic inflexibility. So tracking heart rate variability, doing breath work, relaxation. We need to maybe work on chronic stress first and then prioritize sleep, because you can't sleep if you're stressed. I don't know. They both are important. One impacts the other, and then they impact everything else you do. All right, base hits, picking one thing always to work on. So when you hear all this stuff, don't try to do it all at once. So picking maybe one thing, work on that for a week, and then you're going to add in the next layer and then the next layer. So maybe it's every week or once a month or whatever it might be for you, one thing at a time. So testing protocols, measure resting metabolic rate. We do your exercise test, figuring out your fat max, your crossover point, or tracking your oxygen, carbon dioxide, or respiratory system. We're watching your respiratory exchange ratio. So if you're a good AMPK activator, or if you need more fat adaptation. So this is key part down here, 0.7, 0.85. So really look at that. Whoops. Okay. So fat max is what I want to test. It's not percentage of your VO2 max. That it's not a lactate threshold test. It's looking at what truly is your fat max, right? So when we see carb burning dominates, it's not lactate threshold when we're doing a real live test. It's looking at where actually that carb goes over. So we call it metabolic crossover point. And the last few slides, adjusting your training based on PNOE data. So when we're testing high, remember we said, if you're burning a lot of carbs at low intensity, you're a poor fat oxidizer. What should you do? Increase zone 2 training, your cardio, reduce processed carbs. If your crossover point, metabolic crossover point is really low, you shift early to carb dependency, you have low metabolic flexibility. What should you do? Add in HIIT. Now, it's not really, HIIT training's a big umbrella. Sprint interval training is below that. So sprint interval training more specifically, and that will improve AMPK as we went over mitochondria. If we test and we see you have low VO2 max or poor oxygen utilization, this is a clue that we should work on looking at your interval training and endurance training volume per week. Now, if your resting metabolic rate is low on the RMR test, where we lay down for 10, 15 minutes and measure your breath, your metabolism is slower than it should be, then we focus on mTOR, focus strength training and your protein intake. If your carbon dioxide output is high, it means you are metabolically inefficient, and we need to work on your mitochondria function. Maybe we need some more nutritional therapy, maybe some fasting, maybe some breath work. So it depends. This is why we test and on guess and create a personalized program. Step 3, what do we find? Nutritional adjustments based on PNOE data. Carb dependency, again, at rest and during exercise, are you burning mostly carbs? Then we need to look at your blood chemistry panel. I want to see your insulin levels, not just your A1C, but we want to look at more labs. I'd love to look at your Dutch test, to look at your cortisol rhythm, and I'd love to look at your microbiome, gut test, and organic acids to look at your metabolites, your microbiome. If you have any excess candida, mold, we can see that organic acids test combined with a stool test. Low fat oxidation. So if you're not burning fat, you have a poor fat max zone. So say it's 80 heart rate. We want to work on more fat, lower carb, and fasting windows, depending if you got to watch your exercise level and your stressors. Low metabolic flexibility, which means that metabolic crossover point where the carbs go up and the fat goes down. That means we need to carb cycle perhaps on training days, lower carb on endurance days, moderate carb on high intensity days. And then if you have a slow resting metabolic rate, RMR, you have a low metabolic rate, that's more focused, as we said, increase protein, say 40, 50 grams per meal 3 times a day, and you probably need to stimulate muscle protein synthesis with essential amino acids. And of course, you have to combine that with strength training. It's create the good effect. It's the protein and the strength training together. All right, so a sample program to reset your metabolism. If we need to shift a respiratory exchange ratio towards fat ox, if we need to improve your VO2 peak, crossover point improves, and compare resting metabolic rate, VO2 max week 4. So we want to test ideally every 2 months every 3 months max on your metabolism testing. So week 1, maybe you're focusing on here, zone 2, your peak fat max. Maybe next week we're going to add in the sprints, and then we're going to add zone 2, and maybe we finish with some sprints, and then we retest. So good training, HIIT training. I got some examples. 30 seconds, 90 seconds, cool down. Maybe we're doing a bike, assault or spin bike. Rowing machine, you could do that on. Airdyne. If you need more mTOR, here's some ideas. mTOR training, strength training, 5x5, deadlifts, pull-ups. Maybe your upper body focus, doing bench, rows, triceps. Functional strength, maybe you're doing more lunges, step-ups, deadlifts, all that. Single legs, I do. Zone 2, remember, is not percentage of your VO2. We're doing peak fat max. And then nutrition, you might adjust your nutrition to match your exercise. And then what supplements you need. We want to not just take all these things, but look at what's research showing. What do you need more? So maybe you don't need AMPK, maybe you need more mTOR. Where are you imbalanced? And then more mTOR activation, you might need more. Remember, you don't do leucine by itself. No. You have it with essential aminos. Vitamin D and zinc, important. Curcumin, black pepper, really helpful. And then training considerations. So if you have questions, just let me know. Lots of information here, but I go down these deep dives. So head to debbiepotts.net and let me know if you want to learn more how to be your best self as you age. Let's test and not guess. So come on down to North San Diego. I'm testing in Solana Beach, and we can meet and then do the rest online. So you can have a nice little few days in San Diego and enjoy it. The beach walks and sunsets. It's the best. Solana Beach. It's right by Del Mar. And then it's Cardiff, Encinitas, Lucadia, Carlsbad, and then Oceanside's the top end. All right, talk soon, debbiepotts.net. Share if you like this video to those people that you know in your life that might be on the same mission to be fit and healthy from the inside out as they age, a cellular level.